Alrighty, so another one of the big questions I get asked on a pretty regular basis is what to do with AA points. Like, what's important? What do I need to get first? Etc. And the short answer is, well, that depends on what your class mix is and also how you play the game or how you want to play the game. You know, if you're solo versus multiplayer, those are very different situations with different rules. So let's take a look at the AAs, and I'm going to be coming from my perspective of my main trio, which is Paladin, Cleric, Berserker. And we'll work through the list here, talk about the stuff on the menu, uh, with the caveat that as of this recording here on public open beta, the class tab for a lot of classes is kind of barren, you know, especially for classes not named Bard. So at some point down the future, you're going to have more stuff on the class tab that is not available for me to talk about yet. So when that time comes, just do the cost benefit analysis and really, as I've talked about cost benefit analysis before, uh, what I perceive as value is based on the kind of character I play and how I play. You know, I'm a very group play oriented main tank slash healer type of player. If you're playing a very different role, or if you're in a group, or if you're playing strictly solo, then obviously the calculus changes for you. But I want to give you the tools to be able to do that cost benefit analysis in an intelligent fashion so you can do what you want to do and play the game in the way that makes sense to you. So we'll start on the general tab because everybody has these. And we'll just kind of go down the list and talk about how important or not some of these are and like how much I would prioritize them or what kind of scenarios they might be more or less important. So everything is just alphabetical here. So starting off, Adamant Will. Adamant Will gives you percentage-based resistance to charm and mesmerization. Important note, you don't get to 100% on these. You'll get to, I believe, 80% on charm and 45%, or excuse me, 60% on mesmerization. And it is also worth noting, if you have unyielding invocation here, that gives you 25% resistance to fear, mez, and charm. These two effects are multiplicative with each other. So if you have, let's say you have 80% chance to resist charm, that, you know, if you fail that check of the remaining 20%, that then gets multiplied by 75%. So you then have a 16% chance to actually get charmed. So they are multiplicative, not additive. There is currently no way in the game to get to 100% mez or charm resistance, but enemies will only mez or charm or fear you in multiplayer. If you are solo, enemies will simply not use those effects. As soon as there is a second person in the group, though, you better believe enemies who have those types of crowd control abilities will absolutely use them, and they will spam the ever-loving crap out of them. You know, all those necros down in Befallen will start spamming you with fear as soon as you have one friend in the party, and that fear spell is going to send you down the hall to go meet that necro's friends. All 15 of them. So If you are strictly ethical, hardcore SSF player, who is completely asocial and, you're just doing your best Kirito impression, Adamant Will has absolutely no value for you. As a multiplayer focused player, it is very valuable for me. Very high priority because, especially as the tank, if somebody is going to get Mesmed or Charmed, it's going to be me. And if I get Mesmed or Charmed, the group's going to have a bad time. So, very important for me, but depends on your playstyle. Alchemy Mastery and really all of these trade skill masteries. Are you a trade skiller? Okay, well, there you go. Be better at trade skilling. I don't care about trade skills. So, not my play style, but if it's yours, then, well, here you go. Go make more money by being better at your trade skills. Circular breathing is endurance regen. Now, on paper, it might look like it's only, it's 4 ranks, 1 point each. You get 4 points of endurance regen, which doesn't really seem like that much until you realize, like, at level 50, your endurance regen is going to be somewhere around 40-ish per tick before any other buffs are figured in. So it's basically increasing your endurance regen by 10%, and increasing thing by 10% is what most AAs do in this era. So that is right on point with everything else. So I think it's a pretty low priority AA. But if you're using a lot of offensive stance or a lot of striker stance, things that are really endurance heavy, then every little bit helps. Pumping your endurance regen by 10% will give you a pretty decent chunk of sustain in that regard. But for me, I find this to be fairly low priority. Combat agility. This is absolutely god tier. The way combat agility works is it straight up increases this number right here. You'll notice on your character sheet, on your AC, it's listed as number / number pipe number. The first number is your actual real mitigation AC. The second number is your mitigation soft cap, which is the point at which AC values on gear start yielding less than a 1-to-1 return, with the exact ratio being dependent on your class. And then the third number is your evasion. This actually determines how often you get hit or not. Combat agility simply adds one final multiple to this number. By the way, the evasion AC, the way this is calculated, is a function of your defense skill and your agility. And your agility stat is a pretty small part of it, by the way. It's mostly just your defense skill. AC displayed on gear has no effect on this number whatsoever. Defense skill, agility, whatever number that comes out to is your evasion stat. That number then gets multiplied by 1.1 because combat agility rank 3 gives you a 10% bonus. That is huge. Of kind of the traditional big 3 for defenses, combat agility, combat stability, and natural durability, combat agility is far and away the best, and it's not even close. This is one of the best AAs the game has ever had for anybody who has to get punched in the face for a living, which, as a tank, is my job. So this is one of the first AAs I buy, period. Combat Fury gives you at rank 4, gives you a 5% chance to land critical hits. It's more damage. It makes you kill faster. Great. If you're doing melee damage, you're going to pick this up sooner or later. Whether you personally favor offense or defense first, that's up to you, but it's a no-brainer. It's free damage. Combat Stability. All right, of those big 3 I mentioned, combat agility, combat stability, and natural durability, I would actually rank this as the lowest of the 3. Alrighty. So the way combat stability works, by the way, and in combat stability still very good. It's just the other two are better. Um, what what combat stability does is it simply increases your mitigation soft cap by a factor of 1.1. So this number is based on your class. Warriors have the highest, Intcasters have the lowest, everybody else falls somewhere in the middle. Whatever number this would have been gets multiplied by 1.1, and then your actual real AC gets recalculated based on that adjusted value. So it makes you take less damage. So it is really good. Yeah, between, like I said, of the big three defensive AAs, I think this is the least valuable of the three, but it's still really valuable. Crafting mastery. All right, well, are you a crafter? Well, there you go. I'm not a crafter. Moving on. Fear resistance. Again, if you're solo, this has no value whatsoever, because if you are solo, enemies will not fear you. Even Vox and Nagafen, their fear AoE will not affect you if you are solo. As soon as one other person is in the party, though, Dragon Fear starts trying to work on you. Now, only tanks get all 4 ranks. Everybody else only gets 3. So everybody else gets 75% fear resistance. Tanks get fear immunity. As a multiplayer-focused tank, this is strictly mandatory for me. This is one of the first things I buy. I will not hit level 46 without getting this. Even for everybody else, if you're going to be doing multiplayer content, especially Vox or Nagafen, Plane of Fear in particular, you're going to want these because things will fear you, and while you're feared, you are useless. You do 0 DPS while you are feared. So even if you're a rogue or a ranger or something, has a lot of value if you are engaged in multiplayer. Again, if you're solo, though, you can skip it. First aid, if you're using Bind Wound, why? Yeah, the only place you would ever be using Bind Wound is if you're dedicated to doing some kind of pure melee-only meme build or challenge run where you have no other way of healing yourself. I have never used a bandage on EQ Legends before. I mean, the only time I ever used bandages on vanilla EQ was when I was doing it specifically to get the skill up for achievements. So, yeah, moving right along. More crafting stuff, whatever. Foraging. Do you want to be better at foraging? Do you want to find bits of food and water and mushrooms and stuff? Well, there you go. Innate eminence. Okay, so they took the innate strength, innate constitution, whatever series of AAs from vanilla and compressed them down into just one that gives you each rank gives you 2 stat points in all 6 stats or 7 stats. Basically, it makes you a little bit better at everything, and if nothing else, it gives you, just from the stamina and the int/wisdom, it's going to give you an extra 100 hit points and 100 mana. That right there is basically worth the price of admission. More hit points is more better. More mana is more better. The fact that it also gives you a little bit of strength and agility and dexterity and charisma, so much the better. Not a high priority AA by any stretch, but it is totally respectable. Innate lung capacity. Well, you can go get a fishbone earring anytime you want off of Haddon in Keno's Hills. He's up all the time. You can just have permanent enduring breath. This, all right. If you've seen my my guide to spells and you know the drinking game, for my guides, the drinking game is every time I say, waste of ones and zeros, take a drink. Well, pause the video, go grab a drink. Okay, you're back. All right. Because fishbone earrings are so readily available, And because you can pull the Warren effect off as an exaltation and put it on any earring you're wearing, this is officially a waste of ones and zeros. You may now take a drink. Innate metabolism makes you eat your food slower. At this era of the game, that doesn't matter because the only food you're probably eating are iron rations. Somewhere down the road, when there's really expensive stat food in the game that you really don't want to risk wasting, I could see a use case for this, like your Misty Thicket picnics and whatnot. Um, for now, go ahead and take another drink. Waste of ones and zeros. Innate regen. For a lot of scenarios, I would say that a couple points of regen is not really enough to move the needle all that much. Though, till you max this out, till you add Unyielding Invocation, till you add the Warrior Regen AA, it all adds up pretty nicely, actually. So, on any kind of build that has access to healing spells, I wouldn't necessarily think twice about this. But for warriors going all in on regen, I think there's absolutely a use case. Not something I would personally prioritize, but yeah, I totally see the use case out there. Innate spell resistance. 5 ranks gives you plus 10 to all resists. It might seem like a drop in the bucket, and it kind of is. But, 10 resist all as an A might not seem exciting. But if you dropped a piece of gear that had 10 to all resists, you'd probably be very excited. It's just a matter of framing. Like when I dropped this Blackened Alloy Coif off of Lord Pitclaw on my first trip to Runny Eye on open beta, was like, wow, 10 resist all, that's awesome. I'm still wearing it, on a character that's been up and down, all the planes multiple times. It's because I just haven't dropped a planar helmet for my class yet, but, the point stands. It might be a bit of a placebo. Like, did that extra 10 points make you resist the thing you resisted? Or if you didn't have them, would you have resisted it anyway? I mean, obviously, all those die rolls are under the hood. You can't see them, so you'll never know if it was the placebo effect or not. But just 10 extra resist magic to have that little bit better odds of resisting a stun or resisting a mez or any of those other kind of really or resisting a slow or any of those other really debilitating effects. Even if it's a placebo, it has value. It's not going to be the first thing I buy, but it won't be the last. Call that like low to mid tier priority for that. Yay, more trade skills. Moving on. Natural durability of the big 3 defensive AAs. I put this one in the middle. More hit points is more better. It's simple as. Every time you die, it's because you didn't have enough hit points. That's what it comes down to. Everybody needs more hit points. Everybody needs natural durability. It's just a matter of, are you prioritizing the offense or the defense first? So, Pack Rat. Okay, kind of interesting. This is kind of interesting. Reduces the weight of all your equipped and carried items. For most people, this is not really a factor. For monks, it is a big factor because monks need to have their equipped weight below a certain threshold in order to get their monk AC bonus. Now note, on Legends, monks do not suffer an AC penalty for being overweight, but they won't get their bonus if they're overweight. So it's all bonus, no penalty, but they still want to hit that target because that is a big class feature for monks. Also, if you want to, say, buy a bunch of those 50 slot bank boxes from the marketplace, and actually carry them around with you. Those things weigh like 100 pounds each. So you will need a lot of strength to carry those around. If you want to be an absolute pack rat and just have hundreds and hundreds of items in your inventory all the time. Um, so, uh, you know, also, for monks, if you're like a monk paladin, because that is a really strong combo, or monk shadow knight, really, really, or monk warrior, really, really strong combo. If you want to be wearing plate armor, you need to get that weight under control. Unfortunately, item weight does go down with upgrade tiers. Actually goes down pretty precipitously. But yeah, still very, very useful for monks, of questionable value for everybody else. Permanent illusion makes your illusions on you last basically forever, unless you zone with them without them falling off. So, enchanters or Mask of Deception enjoyers and such, uh, nice for y'all. For non-illusion users, has very minimal value. So, also consider you can moat up your illusion spells to increase their duration or get beneficial duration, focus effects, things like that. But yeah, this just kind of solves that problem for you and lets you zone. So yeah, if you're an illusion enthusiast, there you go. Pottery Mastery, absolutely the most important AA in the universe. No, I'm kidding. Moving along. Mm-hmm. Quick Buff is pure quality of life. It doesn't let you do anything you couldn't do before, but it does save you on downtime. So you mem up a spell set of buffs, like, say, ranger buffs or enchanter buffs. You load your kit, you hit the button, boom, you and your group are, have received every buff on the list. Cool. Pretty much instantaneously. Pure quality of life. It's very cost effective. It is good quality of life. I tend to be a little stingy with buying quality of life for myself. That's just a personal thing. Like, I'm perfectly capable of just clicking 14 buffs in a row and just sitting there and waiting. But honestly, though, once you get used to quick buff, it's hard to live without it. So it is what it is. Steadfast Will. This is stun resistance, and only tanks get the full stun immunity at rank 8. This is the AA that makes people switch away from being ogres, as I know plenty of people want to start as ogres for melee frontal stun immunity off the bat, because getting stunned is annoying. Not being able to act is very annoying. So, which kind of explains why stun spells cause so much aggro on mobs. They also don't like having their action economy taken away from them, apparently. Worth noting, by the way, Steadfast Will gets expensive on the last couple of ranks. Rank 8, I believe, costs 12 points and takes you from 90% resistance up to 100% immunity. The early ranks are very cost effective for the value you get. At rank 4, it's 60% stun resistance so far, and I think I've only put, I think it cost like 2233 so far, or something like that. So I've put about 10 AAs into this, and I've gotten 60% stun resistance. So very cost effective early on, not cost effective later on. What I will probably do with this is buy a couple of ranks more or less off the bat, and then save the later ranks for much later, when 12 AAs doesn't seem like so big of a cost. Or if you're an ogre, you can just do without. Stoicism. This one I think people tend to kind of undervalue. So yeah, it reduces how far incoming melee attacks push you backwards. The big value with this is that backwards push causes stun interruption. So if you want to cast big impactful, slow spells in melee combat while getting punched in the face, this has a lot of value. Now, certainly you can use inversion invocation to make spells very quick and avoid most opportunity for enemies to interrupt you. Totally a thing. I think inversion is far and away the best invocation in the game. I use it all the time. It is basically my default state of being unless I need to specifically use overchannel to land a spell on the first try, and I don't want to risk it. I don't want to risk it getting resisted. Something like a slow or a charm, something like that. I'll overchannel. Otherwise, I'm just in inversion all the time if I have any say in the matter. But yeah, this helps you get not interrupted. So very valuable depending on the kind of spells you're trying to cast. Or if you just live in inversion, then it's much less valuable. And everybody who has a mana bar gets inversion, so, you know. On the other hand, if you're trying to use, like, Arcane Mastery as your full-time invocation, then suddenly, you know, this becomes more valuable. So, so there you go. On to the Archetype tab. Now, this is where we're not going to see everything on the menu here, because I might be the wrong archetype. I will mention for pet enthusiasts, Companion Discipline gives you the command /pet hold and /pet G hold. Just buy that. That's your first 2 AAs. That is just attacks on pet users. It turns your pet into a good boy instead of an idiot. Tremendously valuable for pet users. It's only 2 points. It's the best 2 points you can spend as a pet user. But going down the list here. Starting off with Burst of Power. On paper, this sounds really good, because this is Flurry. Increases your Flurry chance, which gives you 2 extra main hand swings after a triple attack. On paper, this is cool. The problem with it, though, is you don't triple attack that often. Right now, every class that gets triple attack, which is all the pure melees, only have a skill cap of 100, so you just don't get many chances to... You just don't triple attack that often. You don't get that many chances for Burst of Power to activate. So, somewhere down the road, when the skill cap on triple attack is much higher, this will go up in value. But for now, its value is unfortunately very marginal. Critical Affliction. Are you a dot enthusiast? Well, here you go. Here's free damage. You know, on my Paladin, Cleric, Berserker setup, the only damage over time effects I have are the couple of Cleric Undead dots that I never bother casting. So this has very, very minimal value to me, but if you're a Necro or a Shaman, this is big money right here. As opposed to Destructive Fury, which is just direct damage crit, which does also apply to things like Instrument of Knife procs or other direct damage weapon procs. Obviously, if you're a wizard or a proc enthusiast or something like that, or life tap enthusiast especially, this is big money. For me, not so much. Double Riposte. Are you getting punched in the face a lot? Do you want to get a little bit more free damage from your riposte? Well, here you go. It's not a lot of damage, but it is free. So it is technically better than nothing, but not a whole lot better than nothing. Finishing Blow. This one's kind of interesting. At rank 1, it doesn't really do much, but by the time you hit rank 3, it actually goes off a decent amount and lets you dispatch enemies with a critical hit pretty consistently. It's actually really useful if you max it out. This is one of those, don't buy it unless you're going to buy all 3 ranks. But you'd be surprised at how good it is at actually finishing off enemies at low health. You do need to land a critical hit to make this do anything. So obviously you need combat fury, or you need to be a warrior, or you need to be a berserker, or preferably some combination of the above. The higher your critical hit chances, the more likely this is to go off. So I would again say, unless you're a warrior or berserker, don't even bother until you've bought all of Combat Fury. Um, yeah, Fury of Magic again. Goes hand in hand with Destructive Fury. If you're buying one, you're buying the other because you're a nuker. Healing Adept. All right, well, this is for direct heals, increasing the potency by 2, 5, and 10%. Now, if you're focused on things like superior healing rather than heal over time, like snails healing or flower heal, then this has a lot of value. If you're using more heal over time effects, then this moves down the food chain, and its cousin Healing Boon, which is the heal over time version. Between the two of them, it depends what type of healing you're doing more of. I will mention, as I've said in the past, I think the best heal in the game, not named Promised Renewal, is Sacred Echo. Although the snail line and the flowering line are also both awesome. I think actually heals over time are disproportionately good in this game. So generally speaking, if you are an actual priest, I think Healing Boon probably actually outweighs Healing Adept for like the rangers and beast lords out there who don't get heal over time effects at all, or at least any worth talking about. Then Adept wins between the two of them. But also, yeah, it just depends on which spells you personally are casting. Likewise, Healing Gift is boosting your direct heals to make them crit. So if you're casting more direct heals, there you go. Versus if you're casting heals over time, then you'll get those exceptional heals from heal over time ticks from Healing Boon. So depends on your spellcasting preference. Improved Bash, very high value actually. Now, as a paladin, specifically, paladins might be inclined to pass on this because Fiery Avenger exists. Keep in mind, you don't start the game with a Fiery Avenger. You gotta make it to 46 before you get that. And if you are also a cleric, you have access to Baton of the Sky, which is straight up better than Fiery Avenger in every way. And Baton of the Sky is cleric only, so you can't move your Fiery Avenger Warn effect onto it. Now, you can equip a Fiery Avenger in the any slot and get the Warn effect that way. Keep in mind, though, you do need to have a two-handed weapon equipped. You can't, say, be dual-wielding a pair of one-handers and have the Fiery Avenger in your any slot. That does not work. You need a two-hander. But being able to bash is so valuable for stunning enemies and interrupting their spells, doing just free damage, especially if you're in like Berserker stance or fully hasted. It is a lot of extra spell interrupts. So very high value for two-handed weapon enjoyers, but if you're dual wielding, it does nothing. So this is a matter of your combat style here. Innate Invis to Undead. A couple of different classes have some version of this or innate camouflage. It's a convenience spell to turn a regular spell gem into just an AA button. It's quality of life. I tend to be a little stingy on buying quality of life stuff, but it's only 3 points, so it's cheap QOL. Mass Group Buff. Because everybody in your raid is just in your group and is affected by your group buffs anyway, this has pretty limited value. Like the value of MGB is to go into the EC tunnel where everybody is standing around and just buff 50 people at once just to be nice. That's the use case in the context of this game. This made way more sense in vanilla EQ, where you've got a raid of 54 people and you are only in a group of 6, and you need this to buff your whole raid in one shot. Here in Legends, the value of this, yeah, really is just about being nice in the EC tunnel. Master of All, this one is neat, and it lets you gain a second, third, fourth, etc. Specialization. So, very useful, especially since you will probably want more than one specialization. So you can have reduced costs on things like both heals and nukes, for example, by having both alteration and evocation. Because specialization really does add a lot of mana efficiency. Something I've talked about in the past. It's very much worth it for hybrids. For somebody who's like maining a hybrid class, like a paladin or a ranger or something, to have some kind of full caster in your kit, because that full caster gives you access to specialization, because hybrids do not get specialization. And Master of All just means you get to specialize in more than one school of magic. So, very, very useful. I would probably prioritize one rank of this to have like alteration and evocation. Those two right there cover pretty much every spell in the paladin and cleric repertoire. For other classes like mages, have more conjuration based spells, might be more, like the mage question is usually evocation or conjuration. Well, why not both? Why not Zoidberg? And after that is Mastery of the Past. Mastery of the Past is kind of interesting. I think people might sleep on this a little bit. I find this to be very helpful from a hybrid's perspective, because hybrid spellcasting skills are really bad, especially in the early game. And hybrids have a bad habit of fizzling everything, unless they have a full caster in their kit also. But even full casters will still fizzle a spell at the worst possible time. So this is a nice little bit of insurance to make sure you don't fizzle when it really counts. And at rank 3, you can't fizzle any spell that currently exists. So that's cool. Even rank 2 gets you up to to level 40 spells that won't fizzle, which covers things like Promised Renewal. There are plenty of spells out there that are like level 30 something that you still use at level 50. And again, the fizzle chance might be 1%, but that 1% will always happen at the worst possible time. So this is reasonably cheap insurance. Mental Clarity is more mana sustain. So, more mana is more better. And for a lot of classes, especially while leveling, you have very little mana regen passively, unless you're an enchanter. So even 1 or 2 ranks of this really moves the needle on your mana sustain while leveling, and is just always valuable. So I would probably prioritize at least 1 or 2 ranks early on for sustain while leveling, and pick up the other 2 ranks somewhere down the road, after kind of looping around a bit. Mnemonic Retention gives you extra spell gem slots. That's huge, because especially with 3 classes, and especially if you have 2 or 3 classes in your kit that have mana bars, you probably have way more than 8 spells that you want to have access to at any given moment. I personally grab 2 ranks more or less off the bat to crank the bar up to 10. As a paladin cleric, that keeps me pretty well covered for a long time, and I pick up the other slots way down the road. Hybrids just don't have that many spells to have to worry about at any given time. So, but full casters absolutely do. So depending on your particular mix, you might need more gems earlier or not. Persistent casting is to maintain concentration even when stunned. Boy howdy, enemies love to stun you a lot. Cleric enemies love to spam stuns. Paladin enemies love to spam stuns. Everything is constantly bashing and kicking. So, depending on, at least if you're melee stun immune, that solves part of the problem. This helps to mitigate the other half of the problem. Especially against enemies that are themselves unstunnable, whose stuns you can't interrupt. So, nice bit of insurance to deal with that sort of effect. Physical enhancement, very, very high cost effectiveness on this. This is a little bit of combat agility, a little bit of combat stability, and a little bit of natural durability all rolled into one. It's like an extra rank 1 of each of those for only 3 AAs. Huge value. It might only be a little bit of each, but the cost effectiveness is just off the chart. Quick damage reduces cast time of your nukes. If you've, are you a wizard? Are you a necro? Or do you have a lot of big nukes with substantial cast times, specifically longer than 3 seconds? Well, here you go. As a paladin, most of my nukes are only like a 1.5 second cast time, so this does nothing for me for the most part. But if you're a wizard or a necro or something, yeah, very, very high value. Rampage, unfortunately, is bad. This is 1 round of melee combat every 10 minutes. This is an AA that will get better down the road once it gets a bunch of its upgrades to bring the cooldown down to something more interesting. For now, this falls into the category of just barely technically better than nothing. Can't take a drink. Can't call it a waste of 1s and 0s. It is just barely technically better than that. Spellcasting deafness. This is one that people tend to neglect a little bit. Reduces the cast time of beneficial spells that have a duration. This is really, really useful. This is a lot of spell haste. And while a lot of your big, 3 second or longer duration beneficial spells might be stuff that you're just hitting on quick buff, this applies to pacify spells, by the way, because those are classified as beneficial spells. This also speeds up Spirit of Puma, notably. And a couple, so if you have any of those short duration buffs that you actually do cast in combat, this gains a lot of value, especially if you have to cast those spells while getting punched in the face. So, yeah, not like super, super high priority, because Spirit of Puma is a level 50 spell, but still very valuable. Spellcasting Mastery reduces the mana cost of all your spells by 10%. Huge value. This plus specialization, again, is why hybrids benefit so much from having a full caster in their kit. Only full casters get Spellcasting Mastery. Hybrids don't get this. Huge improvement to mana efficiency, and therefore the duration that you can sustain combat, especially against a big boss. So yeah, very, very, very high priority there. Spellcasting Reinforcement, very valuable for 2 reasons. One, making your buffs last longer. That's good quality of life. It's good inexpensive quality of life, not having to rebuff yourself so often. Increasing the duration of special short duration buffs like Spirit of Puma. Big value right there. Also, with the exception of Druid Heal Over Time spells, your Heal Over Time spells last longer because of this. And especially things like Cleric Echo Heals gain an extra tick at, I want to say, rank 2 of Spellcasting Reinforcement, because those spells will round up pretty generously to get that extra tick. and getting a third tick on an echo heal is huge value for a cleric. So like 2 ranks of this or whatever it takes to get that extra tick on an echo, very, very high priority for me as a cleric. Jumping over to the class tab. Now again, as I mentioned, for a lot of classes, they just don't have that much stuff on this page yet. That stuff's still being implemented, so there's a lot of stuff there we can't talk about yet. But off the bat, Active Valor. Active Valor, very, very important AA. It is the only AA that kills you, because you sacrifice yourself to transfer all of your remaining health to your target. Now, the important reason why this matters is if you use this to save the cute elf cleric, she is obligated to cyber with you after the raid. It's a law. Like, it's actually written into the constitution of Felwith. And, you know, elf clerics are very lawful aligned, so they will abide by that constitution. So, yeah, very, very important. Bestow Divine Aura, and I'll also mention just regular Divine Aura here, together as a pair. Divine Aura is just a spell as an AA. Regular Divine Aura has a 15-minute cooldown by default. So from the time you swap the spell in onto your bar until you can actually use it is 15 minutes. Kind of a drag. This is ready off the bat, so very useful. Also saves you a spell gem. So I would call this a little bit better than Quality of Life. Bestow Divine Aura also is an entirely separate timer, by the way. It's a whole separate ability. It gives you a targeted Divine Aura so you can save somebody else. But here's a special use case for these two. And you can also add the Divine Aura spells and the Divine Barrier spells to this as well. So you could actually have like all 4 of them as a cleric lined up. You can use, if you're, let's say, fighting a big boss and you're starting to get low on mana, you're kind of falling behind in the War of Attrition, you can cast Divine Aura and just give yourself an 18-second med break. You know, you switch to Unyielding to regen, or let's say you switch to like Recovery, Invocation, you switch to Balanced Stance for Endurance regen, and you just take an 18-second break. And then you cast the next one of these on yourself to give yourself another 18-second break. And then, since you have both Divine Aura and Divine Barrier prepped as actual spells, you cast both of those. And suddenly, you have given yourself a 72-second med break while in combat. It's really cheesy. But that's okay. Totally valid, especially if you're trying to do something like a low-level run on like a high-difficulty Inneruk or something. Yeah, just take a med break in the middle of a boss fight. Why not? Totally valid. Blood Rune. This is a Berserker AA. This is like the Berserker AA, kind of. And melee and ability criticals, that means like Frenzy, Bash, Kick, stuff like that. Critical hits give you, percent of the damage done as a rune, up to a percentage of your max HP. This one's really cool, and it's really cheap to buy. On closed beta, I had this, and like my chat bar was just getting spammed with rune effects. This is not so great in the early game, where your hits are just not doing that much damage, and your critical hit chance is just not that high yet, and your HP is so low that the percentage of that is a hard limitation. So even though it is really cheap, I wouldn't bother buying it early on. But late game, once you have better weaponry, so you're hitting harder, you have a better crit chance, and you have more hit points, this gets really, really good. This is a lot of passive, always-on mitigation. It's free mitigation. It's super cost-effective. Absolutely S-tier ability. This is one of the big reasons to have Berserker in your kit at all. especially as somebody who has to get punched in the face all day. Holy Steed. You get to run around at bard speed, basically, for the low cost of 5 AAs. You get to have a horse. Very nice. Instead of spending 120 grand or whatever that it costs to buy a horse, you just get one at level 20 for the low cost of 5 AAs. Super massive quality of life. So good. So good. Jumping down past the innates that you get just for leveling or for existing to Purify Soul. When activated, the target is cured of 72 poison, disease, and curse counters and has a 95% chance to remove up to 6 detrimental effects. So, a couple of points here on Purify Soul. First off, curse effects do not currently exist in the game, so that part doesn't do anything. Nothing in the game has more than like 12 or so disease counters, or about 9 or 12 poison counters. So stuff that's curable is already reasonably easy to get rid of. Generally speaking, the poison effects are not even worth curing, and disease effects can be removed via a Shield of the Immaculate once you get that, and everybody can use Shield of the Immaculate. 95% chance to remove detrimental effects is conceptually cool. Unfortunately, right now the only non-counter-based detrimental effect you're probably going to be hit by is Root, and as soon as you cure it, the enemy will immediately just cast it again. So, not a huge use case, except for when you're trying to pull a bunch of mobs, they root you immediately. This gives you a 95% chance to try to remove the root so you cannot die. It is on a 30-minute cooldown, though. So this is a get out of jail or get out of root free card once every 30 minutes. This will become good down the road once we get some upgrades to bring the cooldown down to something more manageable and more interesting. And once there are more detrimental effects that are harder to get rid of by other means. So right now, not much of a use case for it. Down the road, though, it will, the NPC effects will catch up to this eventually. But for now, it's at the very, very bottom of the priority list. Now, Slay Undead. Oh boy, this is probably the iconic Paladin AA. This is one of the reasons to be a Paladin instead of, say, a Warrior. The ability to just delete undead enemies. 1,250% damage is a lot. You'll, with endgame weaponry, you'll see these land for like 2,000 or 3,000. I've seen a screenshot of somebody landing an archery hit as a Paladin / Ranger for over 8,000 damage in one shot. Now, that is the planets aligning to make that sort of thing happen. But yeah, this is big dopamine, big damage. This is the first thing I buy as a Paladin. This supersedes everything else for me because it helps facilitate the leveling process and the grinding process. Especially because in Old World, there's a lot of undead. Unrest, of course, is a really, really good leveling zone for the early game. Or not, Unrest for the early-ish to mid-game. Befallen for the early game. Lower Guck for, level 16 or 20, from level 20 to basically 46, or all the way to 50 if you really feel like it. Plane of Hate, Plane of Fear, both have a lot of undead as well for late game grinding or just general gear grinding, for end game action. Sadly, none of the big bosses in the game are undead, but a lot of their minions are. So, huge value. Again, one of the definitive Paladin AAs. On the exact opposite of the spectrum, however, is Tireless Sprint, which is a Berserker AA. That when activated, increases your movement speed by 125% for 18 seconds on a 25-minute cooldown. Good God. It's kind of like casting Spirit of Cheetah, but with a way, way, way worse cooldown. Not a lot of use cases for this. It's only 3 points. You know, if you want to set a land speed record running across Western Karana or something, go for it. I wouldn't buy this until I was truly out of things to buy. You know, yeah, I could. If this had a much, much shorter cooldown, I could maybe think of a use case for running around someplace like Plane of Fear to bring a big group of mobs back to camp for the group to deal with, but as is, this is not good. On the other hand, Turn Undead is a cleric ability, which does a nice little dot there. Does 200 damage per tick for 4 ticks on a 2-minute cooldown. You know, it's not usable until level 40, though. For the amount of damage it does, it'd be nice if it was usable at an earlier level. But interestingly, other thing it does, well, A, it's got a magic resist check of minus 500. Nothing will resist this. Basically ever. Unless the thing is just straight up immune to magic. And then it has a 10% chance to trigger Infusion of Holy Light 1, which does 1,000 damage. It does 1,000 base damage, and it always crits. So, by default, that means that the Holy Light trigger always does 2,000 damage. But if you took Destructive Fury to increase your spell critical multiplier, it'll do 3,000 damage. So, it's only a 10% activation, but it's free damage, and it's at least a 200-point dot for free. So, and it's only 3 AAs, so I'd say, totally worth it. I just wish it came online a little earlier. And then last on this list here is Valiant Steed. This has the same mobility as Holy Steed, but now it's a unicorn. So it has a horn on its head. Do you want to ride around on a cool, manly unicorn and impress all the ladies? Well, here you go. And to clarify, Turn Undead, the nuke trigger is only on cast. It does not activate on dot ticks. It's just when you push the button, there's, in addition to hitting the dot, it might also hit the nuke. So, there's no... Unfortunately, you could not hit the lottery and have it proc the nuke on every dot tick. Sorry. Then let me jump to one of my other kits here just to look at a couple other things, just to swap things around. Let me go ahead and edit this. We'll go to Beast Lord and Ranger. There it is. I'll just mention a few other things on the Archetype tab that we didn't have before. As I said before, by the way, Companion's Discipline, it's the best 2 points you can spend as a pet owner, because it turns your idiot pet into a good boy. It's important enough that it bears repeating. Ambidexterity makes dual wield really good. It's pretty much mandatory for dual wielders. It is 9 points. It is expensive, but if you're dual wielding, it's just a given. And then a couple other things on here. Crit Affliction and Destructive Cascade. For the dot enjoyers, Necros and Shaman, I'm looking at you. This is kind of bread and butter damage right here for you guys. Innate camouflage, kind of like innate IVU. It's quality of life in AA form. Mend companion, very very useful. 5,000 point heal on a 10-minute cooldown. Very useful for keeping your pet alive. Very high value there. Pet affinity, especially if you're a pet user and you are also part bard, this one becomes kind of mandatory. It's also very, very inexpensive. Or if you have a lot of other group buffs, again, it's kind of just a tax on pet owners. But it's only like 2 points, so not too much to complain about there. Over on the class side here, the kind of the big one here is like weapon mastery of the scout. This is for you archery enjoyers. You know, if you want to be a ranger and actually use ranged weapons like Wind Striker, there you go. That's just like attacks on archery to make archery good. On top of having to already be a ranger. Paragon of Spirit and Plying Possum, both very high value for Beast Lords. You know, maybe not as high value as Active Valor, activating all that delicious oxytocin in the cute elf cleric, but, you know, not everybody can have that level of swagger, you know. And I'll jump over to this other kit here, just to talk about a few things on this kit, and then I think we'll probably have everything more or less accounted for at that point. So notably, a couple of things here. Acrobatics, that increases your safe fall. Fall damage almost does not exist in this game, so yeah, take a drink, because this one is a waste of ones and zeros. Going down the list here, anything that we maybe have not talked about yet. Thief's Intuition, same deal. Like, there are basically no sensible or disarmable traps in the game for the most part, so take a drink. It's a waste of ones and zeros. Maybe in the future, when you need to disarm the rug outside of Emperor Srexa's room, or you need to disarm the chests in Demiplane of Blood, then you'll have to give back that drink you just took, but we're not there yet. So for now and for the foreseeable future, waste of ones and zeros. Over on the class tab here, Area Taunt for Warriors is awesome. Escape for Rogues, very, very useful. And it's only on a 5-minute cooldown. Rogues can escape all the time. Very, very useful. Purge Poison is on a 72-minute timer. Removes 1,200 poison counters. That is way more poison counters than you will ever need to remove. And there's nothing really poison-based that's even worth curing in the first place right now. And chances are, whatever effect you just removed, the enemy is going to put back on you in a couple of seconds. And you can't do this for 72 minutes. So, yeah, waste of ones and zeros. Take a drink. Shroud of Stealth, however, is amazing. Very, very high priority for rogues, because there's a lot of stuff that sees through the usual hide-sneak shenanigans that rogues do. Nothing sees through Shroud of Stealth. Like, in the history of the game, even on vanilla, it's a long time before anything sees through SOS, and it is a very short list of things that do. Currently, in Legends, nothing sees through SOS that I could find. So this lets you actually be sneaky and stealthy and do rogue stuff in the face of especially named mobs. A lot of named mobs, even low-level named mobs down in like Befallen, will see through SOS. Or, excuse me, will see through regular hide sneak, and you need SOS to sneak past them. So, tremendously high value for rogues. Warcry, Unfortunately, for warriors, makes your group members immune to fear for 10 seconds on a 36-minute cooldown. Woo. Yeah, take a drink, waste of ones and zeros. However, Warrior's Endurance, this one is really, really good. I was almost shocked how much value I got out of this when I was playing on a Paladin Warrior Rogue. 1% regen per tick. So when you're rocking, you know, 7,000 hit points as a planar geared warrior, that's 70 HP per tick. That's not nothing. That's real nice. That's a lot of passive sustain. This is really good. And plus, don't forget, you can double that with Unyielding Invocation. Go up to 2% of your health per tick. That's huge for in-combat regen. Yeah, very, very valuable ability right there. Now, of course, there's plenty of other class AAs for the other classes. Bard, notably, by the way, is very, very AA hungry because Symphonic Aura is what lets you actually kind of do the Legends specific Bard stuff of turning into an Aura bot like a Diablo 2 Paladin. Then you've got Instrument Mastery to make your instruments scale your songs that much harder. You've got Jam Session. Bard has probably more important class AAs than any other class in the game as of this recording on beta. A lot of classes are kind of barren on the class tab here, but yeah, Bard is very AA hungry. But hopefully that had value for you. Hopefully that gave you some ideas and information to be able to intelligently do your own cost-benefit analysis so you can decide for yourself what has priority or not for your playstyle. Because again, you're not playing the same character that I'm playing. You're not playing the same way that I play. And I want you to play your way. So follow your own priority list. You don't have to do what I do. Just be yourself. But otherwise, that's it for this guide. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.